What if I told you that the most powerful families in America are not the ones you read about in the headlines, but three dynasties whose influence reaches deep into Wall Street, hotels, retail, even the White House? These are not just billionaires, they are empire builders. And if you stay until the end, you'll see how their wealth and power secretly connect, revealing the blueprint of modern American dominance. Immigrant origins, from humble beginnings to ambition. Every great dynasty begins with a story of survival, and for America's most powerful Jewish families, that story is nothing short of extraordinary. They didn't start out with gilded mansions, private jets, or billion-dollar empires. They began with nothing but ambition in their pockets and a determination to bend the American dream to their will. Their journeys from immigrants to moguls reveal how resilience, risk-taken, and relentless vision can transform obscurity into unimaginable influence. Take Marcus Goldman, for example. In 1848, he left Bavaria with barely $1 to his name. He arrived in New York Harbor not as a financier or tycoon, but as a street peddler, selling household goods from a backpack on the streets of Philadelphia. The image is almost impossible to reconcile with the empire he would later build. By 1869, Goldman had launched Marcus Goldman & Co., specializing in commercial paper, short-term loans that allowed businesses to meet payroll and expenses. Within a decade, his firm was managing transactions worth over $5 million annually, a staggering fortune in the 19th century. That bold leap laid the foundation for what the world now knows as Goldman Sachs, a powerhouse that today oversees more than $2.5 trillion in assets. Across the country, another immigrant story was unfolding. In 1881, Nicholas Pritzker, a Jewish immigrant from Ukraine, arrived in Chicago with no fortune, only hope. He worked tirelessly, first as a pharmacist's assistant, then as a lawyer. His relentless pursuit of opportunity would ignite a family empire unlike any other. By the mid-20th century, his descendants, J., Donald, and Robert Pritzker, were diversifying into industries ranging from real estate to manufacturing. But their crowning jewel came in 1957, when Jay and Donald co-founded Hyatt Hotels. What began as a modest airport hotel soon expanded into a global brand worth more than $8.5 billion today, with properties across every major city in the world. The Pritzkers didn't just build hotels, they built monuments to luxury, from the iconic Hyatt Regency in Atlanta to world-class resorts in Asia and Europe. Their wealth was no longer just financial, it was cultural, woven into the very way people experienced travel and hospitality. Meanwhile, on the West Coast, Donald and Doris Fisher were quietly sketching out an idea that would redefine retail. In 1969, they opened the first Gap store in San Francisco with a simple but disruptive concept: sell Levi's jeans in every size, alongside vinyl records that spoke to the youth culture of the era. The model worked. Within 4 years, Gap launched its own private label, and by 1973 it went public. From there, the expansion was relentless. Old Navy, Banana Republic, and Athleta would all fall under the Gap Inc. umbrella, turning the Fishers into retail royalty. By the late 1990s, the company's revenues exceeded $15 billion annually, with thousands of stores across 43 countries. Their sons, John, William, and Robert, carried on the legacy not just in fashion but also in sports ownership, buying stakes in the Oakland Athletics and San Jose Earthquakes. What started as one small store became an empire that reshaped how Americans dressed and consumed fashion. What unites these three families isn't just wealth, it's the audacity to dream bigger when circumstances gave them nothing. Marcus Goldman saw opportunity in scraps of paper called IOUs and turned them into a multi-trillion-dollar banking machine. Nicholas Pritzker's descendants redefined global hospitality, building a brand so powerful it still dictates luxury standards today. And Donald and Doris Fisher transformed everyday shopping into a cultural statement, proving that jeans and t-shirts could generate billions of dollars in global revenue. These are not fairy tales, they are the raw, unfiltered immigrant stories that built modern America. From Wall Street skyscrapers to Hyatt resorts to Gap stores in every mall, the fingerprints of these families are everywhere. They remind us that the American dream isn't just about survival, it's about conquering. And here's the twist, this is only the beginning. Stay with us, because the deeper you go into their rise, the more shocking the revelations become. From secret deals on Wall Street to political influence at the very highest levels, their legacies prove one undeniable truth: wealth is never just about money, it's about power, permanence, and rewriting history itself. If you're fascinated by how immigrant families turned a single dollar into billion-dollar empires, drop a comment below and tell us which story inspired you the most. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter in uncovering the world's most powerful dynasties. Goldman Sachs, redefining global finance. On Wall Street, few names carry as much weight as Goldman Sachs, but behind that global powerhouse lies a story that begins not with skyscrapers and billion-dollar mergers, but with one immigrant's determination to rewrite the rules of American finance. Marcus Goldman, arriving in the United States with little more than ambition, didn't just join Wall Street, he reinvented it. His weapon, a financial tool so simple yet so revolutionary it would change the way money moved in America: commercial paper. In the 1860s, businesses were desperate for ways to cover short-term expenses, payroll, supplier costs, seasonal fluctuations. Banks at the time weren't fast enough and traditional loans were cumbersome. Marcus Goldman saw an opening. He began brokering promissory notes, essentially IOUs, between trusted businesses and wealthy investors. Within just a few years, his firm, Marcus Goldman & Co., was handling transactions worth more than $5 million annually, an astronomical figure for the era. What seemed like scraps of paper to others became the foundation of a financial empire. By 1882, the firm gained a powerful boost when Samuel Sachs, Marcus's son-in-law, joined the company. The partnership would transform Marcus Goldman & Co. into Goldman Sachs, a name that would soon echo across the canyons of Wall Street. Samuel Sachs brought vision and strategy, pushing the firm to expand beyond short-term lending. Together, they pioneered equity financing, convincing investors to buy long-term stakes in businesses, not just lend money. It was a bold move, one that shifted Wall Street from simple lending into the world of investment banking. Goldman Sachs quickly became the go-to institution for America's industrial giants. One of its first major triumphs was the initial public offering of Sears, Roebuck & Company. The IPO didn't just raise capital, it legitimized Goldman Sachs as the master of bringing household names to the public markets. Decades later, in 1986, Goldman Sachs would orchestrate another milestone IPO, Microsoft. At the time, Bill Gates' company was transforming how the world used computers, and Goldman Sachs helped secure the funding to make Microsoft a global titan. That deal alone generated millions in fees and cemented the firm's reputation as a powerhouse capable of spotting and scaling innovation. But Goldman Sachs didn't stop there. As the 20th century unfolded, the firm became synonymous with Wall Street innovation. They expanded into mergers and acquisitions, guiding some of the most important corporate marriages in history. They pioneered deep discount bonds and electronic investment research, pushing the boundaries of what finance could be. When the world needed liquidity, Goldman Sachs stepped in as a market maker, ensuring buyers and sellers could always find each other in equities, currencies, and commodities. And while its financial clout was staggering, Goldman Sachs also extended influence far beyond Wall Street's trading floors. The family and firm invested heavily in education, supporting scholarships and research initiatives that have impacted generations. They poured millions into healthcare, funding hospitals and groundbreaking medical research. They became patrons of the arts, ensuring that cultural institutions thrived. Unlike other dynasties that kept philanthropy at arm's length, the Goldman Sachs family was deeply hands-on, embedding themselves in causes that shaped society. Yet the real genius of Goldman Sachs wasn't just in making money, it was in shaping the very standards of Wall Street. The firm didn't follow trends, it set them. From IPOs to global expansion, from consumer banking with Marcus by Goldman Sachs, to their role as primary dealers in US Treasury securities, Goldman Sachs has consistently positioned itself not just as a player in finance, but as the referee defining the rules of the game. Think about it, a family that started with Marcus Goldman trading IOUs in the 19th century now oversees more than $2.5 trillion in assets under management. That is more than the GDP of entire nations. From Sears to Microsoft, from Wall Street to Main Street, the Goldman Sachs legacy is one of reinvention and dominance. And the best part? This is just one chapter in the saga of families who, against all odds, went from immigrants with nothing to dynasties controlling billions. Pritzker dynasty, hotels, politics and power. When people walk into a Hyatt hotel lobby, they rarely realize they are stepping into the empire of one of America's wealthiest dynasties, the Pritzkers. Their story is not just about luxury hotels, it's about law, real estate, politics, and the building of a financial machine so vast it still controls tens of billions of dollars through carefully engineered family trusts. The story begins in 1881, when Nicholas J. Pritzker, a Ukrainian Jewish immigrant, arrived in Chicago with little more than determination. His early work as a lawyer laid the foundation for the family's future, but it was his descendants who turned modest beginnings into global influence. Abram Nicholas Pritzker, known as Abe, was born in 1896 and graduated from Harvard Law. Alongside his brothers, he built a law firm specializing in corporate work and taxation. But the Pritzkers weren't content to simply bill clients. By the 1930s, they pivoted into real estate and investments, spotting opportunities during the Depression that others were too afraid to touch. It was the next generation, J. Robert and Donald Pritzker, that transformed the family fortune into a modern empire. In 1957, Jay and Donald purchased a rundown motel near Los Angeles International Airport for just $2.2 million. That modest gamble became the seed of Hyatt hotels. Within a decade, Hyatt had grown into one of the most recognizable hotel chains in the world. The Hyatt Regency Atlanta, opened in 1967 with its iconic atrium design, became a symbol of modern hospitality. By the 1980s, Hyatt was operating hundreds of properties across multiple continents, bringing in billions annually. Today, Hyatt Hotels Corporation generates over $5 billion a year in revenue and controls more than 1,300 properties worldwide, an empire that traces directly back to that single Los Angeles purchase. But the Pritzkers did not stop at hotels. They expanded into manufacturing, with Robert Pritzker managing the Marmon Group, a conglomerate of more than 60 industrial companies generating billions in annual sales. The Marmon Group eventually sold to Berkshire Hathaway in a deal valued at $4.5 billion, further cementing the family's reputation as shrewd deal makers. Their influence also extends deeply into American politics. Penny Pritzker, one of Abe's granddaughters, became U.S. Secretary of Commerce under President Barack Obama. Her personal fortune has been estimated at over $3 billion, bolstered by her investments in real estate, technology, and education ventures. Another prominent heir, J.B. Pritzker, leveraged both wealth and political strategy to become the governor of Illinois in 2018. His personal net worth, estimated at more than $3.5 billion, makes him one of the richest politicians in the United States. At the heart of this dynasty lies a sophisticated network of family trusts created to safeguard assets and avoid destructive infighting. These trusts, collectively managing tens of billions of dollars, distribute wealth across multiple branches of the family while keeping power centralized. It is estimated that more than $11 billion is tied up in these structures, ensuring that the Pritzker name remains synonymous with both stability and secrecy. From luxury Hyatt hotels to political power in Washington and Springfield, the Pritzkers exemplify how immigrant grit can evolve into generational dominance. Their empire is not just built on concrete and steel, it is structured on legal foresight, financial engineering, and an uncanny ability to pivot into whatever industry promises the greatest returns. Fisher family, shaping American retail and lifestyle. In 1969, Donald and Doris Fisher opened a small store on Ocean Avenue in San Francisco. They weren't seasoned retailers. Donald had struggled in real estate, and the couple simply wanted a clothing store that actually carried jeans in every size. That store became Gap, a name chosen to reflect the generation gap of the late 1960s. What started as a humble shop selling Levi's jeans and vinyl records would soon transform into one of the most influential retail empires in the world. The concept was simple but revolutionary. Offer jeans in multiple sizes, neatly stacked and easy to find. Shoppers responded instantly. By 1972, Gap had launched its own private label clothing, and just a year later the company went public. Growth was explosive. By the 1980s, Gap had become a household name, expanding into suburban malls across America, targeting middle-class families who wanted affordable yet stylish clothing. The Fishers didn't stop there. In 1983, they acquired Banana Republic, rebranding it from a safari-themed boutique into a polished, upscale clothing brand. A decade later, they introduced Old Navy, designed to capture value-conscious shoppers with trendy fashion at lower prices. That move was a masterstroke. Within just 4 years, Old Navy hit $1 billion in annual sales, the fastest retail brand to do so at the time. By the 2000s, Gap Inc. had become a multi-brand powerhouse. Gap, Banana Republic, Old Navy, and Athleta. Collectively, the company was generating more than $15 billion annually, with over 95,000 employees and thousands of stores in 43 countries. It wasn't just about clothes, it was about shaping how Americans dressed at work, school, and play. From Levi's in the 1970s to athleisure through Athleta, Gap defined lifestyle segments across decades. The Fisher family's reach extended far beyond retail. Their son John Fisher became the principal owner of the Oakland Athletics baseball team and the San Jose Earthquakes soccer club, tying the family name to American sports culture. He also controls significant shares of Gap Inc., maintaining influence over its strategic direction. Robert Fisher, another son, has served multiple times as interim CEO and chairman, guiding the company through turbulent retail shifts. William Fisher expanded into private equity, founding Manzanita Capital, an investment firm managing luxury beauty brands across Europe. Even their art collection reflects their scale of wealth. Doris Fisher, a passionate collector of contemporary art, built one of the most significant private collections in the United States, valued in the hundreds of millions of dollars, eventually lending much of it to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. The Fishers also left a mark through philanthropy. Billions of dollars have flowed into education reform, charter schools, and political donations, aligning their fortune with broader social agendas. Their charitable giving is estimated to exceed $2 billion, reinforcing their role not only as retailers but as cultural and political influencers. From a single San Francisco storefront to a global retail empire, the Fisher family story is one of relentless expansion, brand mastery, and cultural impact. They didn't just sell jeans, they built an empire that touched fashion, sports, art, and education, making the Gap legacy inseparable from the fabric of American life. Philanthropy, cultural impact, and enduring legacy. When immense wealth meets vision, the result is not only dynasties of finance, retail, and hospitality, but also legacies that shape society itself. The Goldman Sachs, Pritzker, and Fisher families used their fortunes to build not just empires, but enduring cultural institutions and philanthropic footprints that ripple across America. The Goldman Sachs family became synonymous with education and healthcare philanthropy. Endowments worth hundreds of millions of dollars have flowed into Ivy League universities, funding research centers, scholarships, and medical innovation. The company's philanthropic arm has supported climate initiatives and social justice causes, often investing more than $200 million annually into community development projects. Their influence extends to the arts as well, underwriting exhibitions at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Museum of Modern Art, ensuring the Goldman name is tied to cultural prestige as much as financial dominance. The Pritzker family, meanwhile, intertwined their fortune with both politics and culture. Beyond building the Hyatt Hotel's empire, they invested heavily in civic institutions. The Pritzker Pavilion in Chicago's Millennium Park, a $475 million project, stands as one of the most iconic cultural spaces in America, designed by famed architect Frank Gehry. Penny Pritzker, who served as U.S. Secretary of Commerce, directed family wealth into social housing and entrepreneurship initiatives, reshaping Chicago's innovation economy. J.B. Pritzker, as governor of Illinois, carried that influence into public policy, blending political power with financial clout. Their philanthropic footprint is vast, spanning the construction of museums, donations to universities like the University of Chicago, and support for medical research. The Fisher family brought their wealth into the world of contemporary art and community giving. Doris Fisher assembled a collection of over 1,100 works of modern art, valued at more than $1 billion, much of which now enriches the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. Their contributions to education, particularly through charter schools, run into the billions, cementing their role as not just retailers of clothing through Gap, Banana Republic, and Old Navy, but as architects of intellectual and cultural growth. Together, these families illustrate how extreme wealth can both spark controversy and forge legacies that endure for generations. Their names are etched not only on balance sheets, but on buildings, policies, and cultural landscapes that define America itself. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which family's legacy do you think has left the biggest mark? Finance, hospitality, or retail? Drop your comment below. From Marcus Goldman's leap from a poor immigrant to the architect of a trillion-dollar financial machine, to the Pritzker dynasty reshaping global hospitality and politics, to the Fisher family transforming how America shops, these families prove that wealth is never just about money. It's about shaping culture, influence, and legacy. Their fingerprints are on the banks you trust, the hotels you stay in, and the brands you wear every day. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden empires, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us as we reveal more untold billionaire stories.